Growing up, my relationship with my parents was fine. It wasn't the warm, fuzzy, picture perfect bond people like to paint, but it wasn't entirely awful either. However, the favoritism was as blatant as sunlight streaming through an open window. My older sister, Emily, now 32, was their pride and joy, the golden child. At 28, I had grown accustomed to living in her shadow. Emily always had the best of everything, the latest gadgets, a wardrobe full of brand new clothes, and the undivided attention of our parents.
Me?
I got her hand-me-downs and a pat on the back, if I was lucky. I didn't resent it, not really. By the time I was 16, I'd learned to fend for myself. I started working part-time jobs to afford the things I wanted. It made me independent, which was something I took pride in. Things took a different turn 3 years ago when Emily got married. My parents gifted her and her husband, Brad, an eye-watering $400,000 as a wedding gift. With that, they bought a stunning house in a posh neighborhood. At the time, I was genuinely happy for her. Sure, it stung a little, but I had my own life going on. I was thriving in my career as a software engineer, had built up a decent savings account, and was dating Jake, who I would later marry. I figured my moment would come eventually, and brushed off the disparity as best I could. Fast forward to last year, and Jake proposed. I was ecstatic. He was everything I had ever wanted in a partner, and I couldn't wait to start our life together. Unlike Emily's extravagant wedding, Jake and I wanted something simple yet elegant. We budgeted around $36,000, enough to celebrate the day without breaking the bank. When my parents offered to pay for the entire wedding, I was floored. For once, it felt like I was being seen, like I mattered just as much as Emily. They seemed genuinely invested, asking about venues, photographers, and even flower arrangements. I didn't expect them to contribute anywhere close to what they gave Emily, but their gesture felt generous and heartfelt. It was an unexpected moment of validation, and I welcomed it with open arms. The wedding day was perfect. We had an intimate ceremony surrounded by our closest family and friends. My parents were lively, giving speeches, dancing, and showering us with smiles and hugs. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly happy. Jake and I planned to go on our honeymoon a week later, giving us some time to wrap up work commitments. But 2 days after the wedding, I received an email from my dad. My heart leaped when I saw it in my inbox, thinking it might be a sweet note or a loving gesture. Instead, what I found left me frozen in disbelief. Attached to the email was an itemized invoice listing every single wedding expense, down to the last canopy. The total? A staggering $35,489. The email was cold and concise. Asterisk, please settle this at your earliest convenience. Your mother and I expect prompt payment. Asterisk, it felt like a slap in the face. I stared at the screen, trying to process the words. I hadn't asked them to cover the wedding. They had offered. They'd been involved in every detail, seemingly thrilled to contribute. This wasn't just about money. It was years of feeling like an afterthought, crystallized into one cruel act. Jake found me sitting there motionless. When I showed him the email, he was livid. We could afford to pay it if needed, but that wasn't the point. The point was the sheer audacity of it all. They hadn't just given Emily $400,000, they had handed it to her, no strings attached. And here I was, being invoiced for what they had framed as a gift. That night, I barely slept, replaying the email in my mind. It wasn't just anger that consumed me, it was heartbreak. This wasn't about fairness or generosity. It was about control. My parents were sending a message loud and clear. I wasn't Emily, and I never would be. The next morning, with Jake's unwavering support, I made a decision. I wrote a check for the full amount and drafted a letter. I couldn't trust myself to confront them face to face without breaking down or losing my temper. In the letter, I laid everything bare. I told them how deeply hurt I was, how their favoritism over the years had shaped my view of our relationship. I reminded them of my independence and how I had worked to provide for myself while watching them shower Emily with everything she could ever want. And yet, I had never once complained. But this was too much. It wasn't just about the wedding, it was about the years of emotional neglect and the stark contrast in how they treated us. I wrote that from this point forward, I wanted no financial interaction with them. Not now, not ever. I didn't want their money, their support, or even an inheritance. They could give it all to Emily, for all I cared. With a check and letter mailed, I blocked their numbers. It wasn't out of anger, but necessity. I needed space to heal. Jake supported me every step of the way, but as the days stretched on, the silence from my parents began to feel deafening. Then the floodgates opened. A few days after mailing the check and letter, my phone started buzzing with messages from family members, some I hadn't spoken to in years. The tone was unanimous. I was being ungrateful. My aunts, uncles, and even distant cousins chimed in, calling me dramatic and selfish. They said my parents had done so much for me and that I was tearing the family apart over a misunderstanding. It wasn't just distant relatives. Emily, of course, had to weigh in. She called me, her voice dripping with anger. "You're being ridiculous," she snapped. Asterisk, Mom and Dad didn't mean anything by it. You should have just paid the invoice and moved on. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Asterisk. Her words stung, but they didn't surprise me. Emily had always been quick to defend our parents, even when their actions were blatantly unfair. Why wouldn't she? She was their golden child, their pride and joy. For her, their generosity was a given, a birthright. For me, it felt like a transaction. I tried to explain my side, but it was like talking to a wall. She wasn't interested in hearing me out. Instead, she accused me of being selfish and ungrateful, claiming I was only looking for reasons to play the victim. By the time the call ended, my hands were shaking. It wasn't anger, it was exhaustion. I had spent years swallowing my feelings, convincing myself that the dynamic between us was normal. But this was the final straw. The next day, the messages kept coming. One text from an aunt particularly stood out. She wrote, Asterisk, you're lucky to have parents who cared enough to pay for your wedding at all. Most people don't get that kind of support. You should be thanking them, not causing drama. Apologize before it's too late. Asterisk. Lucky. Was I supposed to feel lucky that my parents had turned what was supposed to be a gesture of love into a business transaction? I couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry. Jake tried to keep me grounded through it all. He suggested I turn off my phone for a while, maybe take a break from social media. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. As much as I hated reading the messages, I felt like I needed to see the full picture, to understand just how deep this family dysfunction went. It wasn't just the relatives. My parents, though silent at first, eventually made their move. My mom sent an email, not a heartfelt apology or even an attempt at reconciliation, just a justification for their actions. The invoice wasn't meant to upset you, she wrote. Asterisk, it was a life lesson. We wanted you to understand the importance of financial responsibility. If you had paid the check without issue, we planned to surprise you with $100,000 as a wedding gift. Asterisk, a life lesson. They wanted to teach me a lesson about money. Me, the daughter who had been working since she was 16 while Emily lived off their dime well into her adulthood. It wasn't just insulting, it was cruel. The idea that they had dangled this surprise gift as some kind of reward for obedience made my blood boil. Jake was the one who suggested we deposit the check immediately. If it's about control, don't give them the satisfaction of tearing it up later, he said. He was right. I mobile deposited the check that same day, and I didn't feel even an ounce of guilt about it. I responded to my mom's email with a single sentence. Asterisk, thank you for confirming this was a deliberate test rather than a misunderstanding. Asterisk, then I blocked her work email too. I thought that would be the end of it, but things only escalated from there. That evening, Emily showed up at my apartment unannounced. I didn't let her in. Instead, I watched through the peephole as she pounded on the door, yelling my name loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Asterisk, open up, Mia. Asterisk, she shouted. Asterisk, we need to talk. Asterisk. I didn't respond. I knew exactly how the conversation would go, and I wasn't in the mood to be lectured. But Emily wasn't going to let it go. She started yelling through the door, accusing me of being childish and selfish. Asterisk, Mom and Dad, we're just trying to help you. Asterisk, she yelled. Asterisk, they didn't mean to hurt you. They've always done their best for both of us. You're the one blowing this out of proportion. Asterisk. Her words hit differently this time. Hearing her defend my parents' actions so vehemently only solidified what I already knew. She would always side with them, no matter how wrong they were. The golden child couldn't fathom that they might be anything less than perfect. As she ranted, I quietly started recording everything on my phone. I wasn't sure what I'd do with the recording, but I wanted to have proof just in case things escalated further. Emily kept going, her voice rising with every word. They've always done their best for us, she yelled. Asterisk. You're being ungrateful and selfish, tearing this family apart over nothing. Asterisk. Eventually, she left, but not before calling me selfish one last time and accusing me of trying to cut ties with the family over money. That night, I felt the weight of everything crashing down on me. Emily's outburst, the constant messages from relatives, the cold indifference of my parents, it was all too much. Jake sat with me, holding my hand as I tried to process it all. They'll never see it from your perspective, he said softly. Asterisk, they've spent too long convincing themselves that they're in the right. You don't owe them anything, Mia, not your time, not your energy, and definitely not your forgiveness. Asterisk. He was right, but it didn't make the situation any easier. Part of me wanted to fight back, to respond to every text and call, to defend myself against the onslaught of accusations. But another part of me knew it wouldn't make a difference. They had already made up their minds about who I was and what I owed them. The next day, I received a message from an unexpected source, my uncle, my dad's brother. I hadn't spoken to him in years, and his message was short and cryptic. Asterisk, heard about the family drama. Call me when you get a chance. There's something you need to know. Asterisk. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I was curious enough to call him back. What he told me would change everything. When I called my Uncle Mark, I had no idea what to expect. He'd always been on the fringes of our family, someone I vaguely remembered from childhood holidays but hadn't seen or spoken to in years. His voice was steady but cautious when he picked up. I've been hearing a lot about what's going on, he started. Asterisk, I wanted to reach out because, well, let's just say this isn't the first time your parents have pulled something like this. Asterisk. My heart sank. I thought I was calling for support or maybe some outside perspective, but his words hinted at something deeper, something I wasn't prepared for. Asterisk, what do you mean? Asterisk, I asked, gripping the phone tightly.
Mark's site.
Asterisk, it's a long story, but the short version is that this is a pattern, one I've seen before.
It's not just you, Mia.
It's how they were raised. It's how they operate. Asterisk. He told me about his falling out with my grandparents, my dad's parents, nearly 20 years ago. According to Mark, they'd been masters of manipulation, using money as a tool to control their children. When Mark refused to go along with one of their schemes, they retaliated by smearing his name throughout the family. They told anyone who would listen that he was ungrateful and selfish, the black sheep who didn't appreciate all they'd done for him. Your dad sided with them back then, Mark continued. Asterisk, I was devastated. He knew what they were doing was wrong, but he didn't stand up for me. Instead, he played along, probably because he didn't want to risk losing their support. Asterisk. The parallels were unsettling. Mark's story mirrored my own in ways I couldn't ignore. My grandparents had used money to manipulate and control, and now my parents were doing the same thing to me. They learned this behavior from their parents, Mark said. Asterisk, and your dad, well, I think he's just repeating the cycle. He doesn't know any other way to handle conflict. Asterisk. I felt a chill run down my spine. It all started to make sense. The favoritism, the manipulation, the constant need for control. It wasn't just about me or Emily. This was bigger than that. This was generational. Mark's voice softened. Asterisk, listen, Mia, I know how hard this must be for you, but I need you to understand something. This isn't your fault. It never was. They're projecting their own issues onto you because you're not playing their game. You're breaking the cycle and they don't know how to handle that. Asterisk. For the first time, I felt like someone truly understood what I was going through. Mark didn't excuse their behavior, but he gave me the context I needed to make sense of it. I thanked him for calling and promised to stay in touch, but as I hung up, my emotions were all over the place. On one hand, I felt validated. My parents' actions weren't about me. They were a reflection of their own unresolved trauma and dysfunction. But on the other hand, it made me feel even more helpless. If this was how they were raised, could they even change? Could they see me as more than a pawn in their game of control? Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about Mark's words. They explained so much about my parents' behavior, but they didn't make it hurt any less. The messages from family members continued to pour in, each one more frustrating than the last. My cousin Rachel, who I'd always been close to, sent a long text that was equal parts guilt trip and lecture. You're being selfish, she wrote. Asterisk, your parents have done so much for you. They didn't have to pay for your wedding, but they did, and now you're throwing it back in their faces. Do you even realize how lucky you are to have parents who care enough to do that for you? Not everyone gets that, Mia. You should be grateful. Asterisk. Grateful. That word kept coming up like I owed my parents something simply for existing. But as much as I tried to brush off the messages, they were wearing me down. It felt like the entire family had rallied against me, and I was standing alone in the middle of the storm. Jake was my only constant through it all. Every night, he'd sit with me, letting me vent, cry, or just sit in silence. He reminded me over and over again that I wasn't wrong for standing up for myself and that I didn't owe anyone an explanation for how I chose to protect my peace. "They're trying to break you down," he said one night as we sat on the couch. Asterisk, don't let them. You've spent your whole life putting their feelings ahead of your own. It's okay to put yourself first for once. Asterisk. His words stayed with me. I realized that, for as long as I could remember, I'd been seeking their approval, bending over backward to earn scraps of affection and validation. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. Maybe it was time to stop trying it. A few days later, I got a voicemail from my dad. It was the first direct contact I'd had from him since I sent the check and letter. His voice sounded different, tired, almost defeated. "I don't want to fight anymore," he said. Asterisk. I want to talk, if you're willing. Asterisk. He didn't apologize, didn't acknowledge what had happened, but something about his tone gave me pause. Maybe he was starting to see that I wasn't going to back down this time. Maybe he was realizing that this wasn't going to blow over like it had in the past. I played the voicemail for Jake, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to call him back to see if we could finally have an honest conversation. But another part of me was wary. I couldn't ignore what Mark had said. Asterisk, they'll never admit they're wrong because they don't think they are. Asterisk, if I called him back, I needed to be prepared for the possibility that nothing would change. This could be another attempt to manipulate me, to pull me back into their orbit, and make me feel guilty for standing my ground. For now, I decided to sit with it. I wasn't ready to talk to him yet. Not without figuring out what I wanted to say and what I was willing to accept. This wasn't just about the wedding or the invoice anymore. It was about breaking free from a lifetime of emotional manipulation and setting boundaries that I could live with. After days of thinking, I decided to call my dad, not because I was ready to forgive him, but because I needed clarity for myself more than anything. If I didn't address this, it would hang over me forever. Jake supported my decision, but reminded me to stay firm. Asterisk, you don't owe him anything, Mia. Just say what you need to say, and leave it at that. Don't let him twist things around. Asterisk. I called in the evening. My dad answered on the first ring, almost as if he'd been waiting. His voice was cautious, like he didn't know where to start. Asterisk, hi Mia. Thanks for calling. Asterisk, he said. Asterisk, I've been hoping we could talk. Asterisk. There was a long pause. I didn't want to make this easy for him, and I certainly wasn't going to fill the silence. Eventually, he broke it. Asterisk, I just want to say that I'm sorry for how things have gone. Your mother, and I never meant to hurt you. Asterisk. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Asterisk, then why did you send the invoice? Asterisk, I asked, my voice calm but firm. Asterisk. Why did you turn what was supposed to be a gift into this? Asterisk. He sighed deeply, and for a moment, I thought he might hang up. But then he spoke, his words slow and deliberate. Asterisk, it wasn't supposed to be like this. Your mom thought, we thought it would teach you something about responsibility. We were wrong. Asterisk. A part of me wanted to scream. Asterisk, you thought I needed a lesson in responsibility?
Me?
The one who's been working since I was 16 while Emily got everything handed to her. Asterisk, but I kept my composure. I needed to stay focused. You're not hearing me, Dad, I said. Asterisk, this isn't just about the invoice. It's about years of feeling like I don't matter as much as Emily. When she got married, you gave her $400,000, no strings attached. And when I got married, you offered to pay for the wedding, only to send me a bill afterward. Do you have any idea how that felt? Asterisk. He didn't respond right away. I could hear him breathing and the faint creak of his chair as he shifted. It wasn't about the money, he said finally. Asterisk, we've always been proud of you, Mia. We just thought you didn't need as much help. You've always been so independent. Asterisk. That hit me harder than I expected. They thought I didn't need help, that I was strong enough to manage on my own, so they gave all their attention and resources to Emily. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was the closest thing to an admission of guilt I'd ever gotten from him. Being independent doesn't mean I don't need support, I said quietly. Asterisk. It doesn't mean I don't want to feel like I'm just as important as Emily. Do you have any idea how it felt to receive that invoice? It wasn't just money, it was a message. A message that I'll never be enough. Asterisk. Mia, he said, his voice breaking slightly. Asterisk, that was never our intention. Asterisk. I wanted to believe him. For a moment, I almost did. But then I remembered Mark's warning. Asterisk, they'll never admit they're wrong because they don't think they are. Asterisk, and I knew this was as far as he would go. Jake nodded. Asterisk, you don't have to forgive him right now or ever. This is about you, Mia, not him. Asterisk. He was right, of course, but the guilt still lingered. Even after everything, part of me wanted to believe my dad's words. I wanted to believe that he could change, that our relationship could be salvaged. But another part of me knew better. This wasn't just about him. It was about breaking free from the toxic patterns that had defined my relationship with my parents for so long. The next day, Emily called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Her tone was cold, almost rehearsed. Dad said you two talked, she began. Asterisk, he told me you're still upset. Mia, you're blowing this out of proportion. Asterisk. I took a deep breath. Asterisk, I don't think you understand what's going on, Emily. This isn't just about the wedding, it's about everything. How I've been treated my whole life. How you've always been the favorite. Asterisk.
She scoffed.
Asterisk, oh, come on. That's ridiculous. Mom and Dad have always done their best for both of us. Asterisk. Asterisk, really? Asterisk, I shot back. Asterisk, did they ever send you an invoice for your wedding? Or tell you that you needed a life lesson in responsibility? Asterisk. She went silent for a moment before responding. Asterisk, they gave you everything, Mia. You had a beautiful wedding, a great career, and a supportive husband. What more do you want? Asterisk. What more do I want? I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and make her see the years of hurt and neglect I had endured. But I knew it was pointless. Emily had always lived in her own bubble, protected and pampered by our parents. She couldn't, or wouldn't, see things from my perspective. I'm done, Emily, I said finally. Asterisk, I've spent my whole life trying to make this family work, and I can't do it anymore. If you want to side with them, that's your choice. But I'm choosing myself for once. Asterisk. I hung up before she could respond. In the days that followed, I blocked a few more numbers and stopped checking my messages. The peace was immediate, but the pain lingered. Breaking away from my family felt like cutting off a piece of myself, but I knew it was necessary. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, I felt like I was in control of my own story. Weeks passed, and life slowly settled into a new rhythm. The constant flood of messages from my family finally died down, either because they gave up or ran out of things to say. The silence was welcome, but it left me with the daunting task of figuring out what came next. Jake and I began focusing on our life together, our plans, our goals, and the kind of family we wanted to build. He reminded me every day that I wasn't defined by my parents' actions or their lack of understanding. You're strong, Mia, he'd say. Asterisk, you've carried this weight for years, but you don't have to anymore. You can let it go. Asterisk. Letting go, though, was easier said than done. One afternoon, I got another voicemail from my dad. This time, his voice sounded even more subdued than before. I don't know how to fix this, he said. Asterisk, but I don't want to lose you, Mia. Please, just think about talking to us again. Asterisk. I didn't call him back, not because I didn't care, but because I needed more time to figure out what I wanted. My conversation with Mark still echoed in my mind, how he had tried to stand up to my grandparents, only to be ostracized and painted as the villain. Was that where I was headed? Would I spend the rest of my life being the black sheep of the family? Mark called me again a few days later, and we talked for hours. He shared more about his own experience, how he'd eventually found peace by building a life completely separate from the family. It wasn't easy, he admitted. Asterisk, but it was worth it. You deserve to live your life without their baggage holding you down. Asterisk. His words gave me clarity. For so long, I'd been trying to reconcile my need for their approval with my desire for independence. But I realized that I couldn't have both. My parents were never going to give me the validation I craved. They couldn't see past their own expectations and control to truly understand me. I had to let go, not just of them, but of the hope that they would ever change. One morning, as Jake and I sat on the porch with our coffee, I told him about my decision. I'm not going to try to fix things with them anymore, I said. Asterisk, at least not for now. I need to focus on us and on our future. If they want to be a part of that, they'll have to meet me where I am. Asterisk. He smiled, reaching for my hand. Asterisk, I'm proud of you, Mia. It takes a lot of strength to set boundaries like this. Asterisk. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that comes from resolution, but the kind that comes from accepting what you can't control. My parents might never see things my way, and Emily would likely continue to paint me as the selfish, ungrateful daughter. But that didn't matter anymore. I had a partner who loved me, a life I was building, and the freedom to choose how I wanted to move forward. I've since reached out to a therapist to help me process everything. It's been eye-opening to unpack years of emotional baggage and start understanding the patterns that shaped my relationship with my parents. I've learned that it's okay to grieve the family dynamic I wanted but never had. It's okay to feel both love and hurt toward my parents and to set boundaries that protect my mental health. Emily hasn't reached out since our last conversation, and I don't expect her to. I've accepted that our relationship may never recover, and while that's painful, it's also freeing. For years, I tried to bridge the gap between us, but I now realize that some relationships can't be repaired unless both sides are willing to meet in the middle. As for my parents, I've left the door open barely. I haven't blocked my dad's number, but I haven't initiated contact either. I'm not ready to let them back into my life, and I won't be until I'm certain they've truly changed. I don't expect an apology or even a full acknowledgement of their actions, but I do need to see effort, real, consistent effort. Until then, I'm focusing on the life Jake and I are building together. We've started planning for the future, a home of our own, maybe a family someday. I want to create an environment where love isn't conditional and where support doesn't come with strings attached. Breaking the cycle starts with me, and I'm determined to do things differently. Looking back, this experience has taught me so much about myself and what I deserve. It's been painful, yes, but also empowering. I've learned to stand up for myself, to say enough, and to put my own well-being first. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm truly in control. To anyone reading this who's been through something similar, know this. You are not alone. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to walk away from relationships that hurt you, even if those relationships are with family. You deserve to be treated with love and respect, and it's not selfish to demand that. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my parents, but for now, I'm at peace with where I am. And that, I think, is enough.